Hello, everyone, and welcome to Need Indeed's 2021 soiree. I am Wendy Ann Roberts Johnson, and I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of Need Indeed. I'll start with some important housekeeping to ensure that you have the best viewing and participation experience. You may be watching this soiree in the window in the middle of your web page. On the right of that is a chat window. If you want to chat, and we encourage you to do so, enter your name and say hello to us and tell us where you're watching from. Throughout the program, you may use the chat to comment on what you hear and to pose questions to our guest speakers, panelists, and staff. If you'd like to view this program full screen on your computer or cast to your TV, click on the box in the lower right corner of the viewing screen next to where it says YouTube. And to return from full screen, just use the escape key. A tip is that the chat box can be popped out so it can reside anywhere you want it to on your screen. If you decide to watch it in full screen mode, pop the chat out first, then go to full screen. Then you'll use your keyboard functions of Alt-Tab if you're on a PC, or the F3 key if you're on a Mac to see all open windows. You can then select the chat box and go back to the full screen and the chat will be on the top. All right, that's it for housekeeping for now. So let's get on with our program. During this time of virtual event fatigue, we are honored that you have joined us tonight. COVID has changed the way that we work and learn. It has led to layoffs and essential worker shortages. It has shuttered many nonprofits and it has claimed lives. We are grateful to still be here supporting public school classrooms and advancing education equity. Let us pause for a moment of silence to honor the lives of those lost, especially those of teachers and other educators during this pandemic. Thank you. I fell in love with Need Indeed while interviewing for my position. And every day as I hear the stories like the one I'm about to share with you of the impact on our teachers and students, I am more inspired to advance our mission. A Need Indeed student, Yeling M., who attended McCall School as an English language learner student, had 2 years of Need Indeed classrooms, first in 3rd grade by longtime Need Indeed teacher and ambassador, Lisa Hantman, and then in 5th grade with Audrey Russell, one of our newer teachers. Now an 8th grader at Fitzpatrick School, Yeling has continued to use her Need Indeed skills. You see, Yeling and her friend noticed a lack of recycling at their school. There was plastic everywhere and no recycling bins in sight. Initially frustrated by the lack of care for the environment, Yeling harnessed her earlier learning, recognizing that she could be part of the solution. She reached out to Ms. Hantman to brainstorm what could be done. She has done a ton of research, reading articles, reaching out to companies to explore donations, and using her social studies and science teachers, as well as Ms. Hantman, as resources. She sees the issue as a kid problem, not an adult problem. Yeling is leading the charge to reduce use of plastic and to get recycling bins in her school. She's gotten over 200 signatures for submission to her principal in support of this request. Yeling's story highlights the pillars of the Need Indeed approach. Teaching that fosters a community of caring and empathy, learning that builds critical thinking skills through research and informed investigation, learning focused on problem solving, community engagement, accessing community wisdom, civically engaged students who take ownership of issues in their community and take action to address them, and reflection and celebration. Yeling says, and I quote, "If I hadn't done Need Indeed, I wouldn't be where I am today and helping. I'm just trying to make a difference." This is just a powerful story of Need Indeed's longer term impact. Here you have a student who is taking what she learned in the Need Indeed classrooms years ago and is using that to address an issue in her current community. She's taking ownership. She sees herself as responsible for resolving it with the help of community members. Wow. All right, so this soiree would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So let's take a moment to recognize our platinum sponsors, the WSFS Bank Foundation, and Clarivate, two very important supporters of our work, and we appreciate and applaud them. We encourage you to take a look at their websites and to patronize their businesses where possible. The soiree theme, Still We Rise, honors the resilience of our teachers, students, and staff as we have faced uncertain and challenging times. Tonight's program promises to be engaging and will highlight the importance of student-centered learning. We'll hear from our special guest speaker, Dr. Kamika Royal, from poet Jaylene Clark Owens, as well as teachers and students, as they share their successes and hopes despite the challenges. And you get to interact with us via the chat, so keep those comments coming. The soiree is both a celebration and a fundraiser. Our fundraising goal is $50,000, and we're still just under $14,000 away. We raise money through sponsorships, through donations, and through our silent auction. We have a slew of silent auction items, so check out the travel options, gather your friends and family, and plan to take a trip together to locations across the US and the world, and Mexico, including Mexico. It's all the world, right? There's even a once-in-a-lifetime Bali trip that is not to be missed. It's the holiday season, and there is something for everyone on your list, so please check it out. Sixers or Flyers premium box seats, anyone? We have that on the list. And some unique experiences, including the E&J Cigar Lounge and the dumpling making. Pick up an amazing piece of art from one or more of several local artists who have contributed work. The auction closes at 8 p.m. tomorrow, so that gives you plenty of time to browse the options. So bid early and bid often. Remember that you'll need to register and sign in to make a donation or to bid on items. Instructions for that are on the homepage. And now let's highlight more sponsors, our gold and silver sponsors. Again, very supportive of our work, and we applaud and appreciate them. We have Chubb, who's been a longtime Need Indeed supporter, Sear Interactive, Morgan Lewis, the Phillies, Johnson, Kendall and Johnson Insurances, and KPMG. We are tremendously grateful to all our sponsors for their support, both monetarily and in general for our work. And now it's time for me to hand over to Kyra Atterbury, who's one of our program directors, and she's going to take us into the meat of the program. But before she comes on, let us hear Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, read by local poet and actor Jaylene Clark Owens.
Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of a slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Thank you so much, Wendy Ann. I am so honored to have the awesome task of introducing our speaker for the evening. Dr. Kamika Royal is a Philadelphia native with more than 20 years of experience in the field of education. Dr. Royal spent 7 years as an urban education professional in the public schools of Baltimore City and Washington, D.C., teaching and coaching teachers before returning to Philadelphia and transitioning to higher education. She received her BA in English Literature and Political Science from North Carolina Central University, her Master of Arts in Teaching from Johns Hopkins University in English Education, and her doctorate in Urban Education from the Great Temple University here in Philadelphia. She is now an Associate Professor of Urban Education at Loyola University, Maryland. Her debut book, Not Paved by Us, Black Educators and Public School Reform in Philadelphia, will be released in April of 2022. Dr. Royal is a highly sought after speaker and consultant on everything from the social and political context of school reform to educator efficacy and resilience. And we feel very privileged to have her with us this evening. So without further ado, we are proud to present to you Dr. Kamika Royal.
Good evening. Good evening. Can everyone hear me? You can hear me, okay? Okay, all right. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, for being willing to engage with me, and for joining me in this celebration of Need and Deed as they do their awesome work. So I'm always excited to be with Philly folks, as I am a Philly native. I'm from Southwest Philly, Penrose specifically. I graduated from Pepper Middle School 30 years ago. And I always have to tell Philadelphians that I am from the 254th graduating class of the illustrious Central High School. My connections to Philly, though, I left for college, but returned to teach first at Lincoln University outside of Philadelphia, and then to earn my doctorate at Temple. As an academic now, I focus on the socio-political context of school reform. So Kyra mentioned my forthcoming book, which will be ready for pre-order very soon, Not Paved for Us, Black Educators and School Reform in Public School Reform in Philadelphia. It is being published by Harvard Education Press. But so in my work, I examine the intersections of schools and school systems with educators. I don't focus my work on students because I found that students are rarely the problem. And when it seems like children are the problem, usually when you get to the root of the problem, there's an adult attached to it. Students tend to do what we adults allow them to do, and they move through the context we either allow or create. And when we get better, our students get better. When we create different conditions, our students will move through and respond to different conditions. My passion is for us to get better and do better, and to shift the conditions in which we exist and teach. In my work, I aim to teach from liberatory pedagogies that insist on the co-construction of knowledge and socio-political consciousness. And I teach and encourage other educators to do the same. I use narrative feedback. I believe in the co-construction of knowledge through active engagement and constant dialogue, which sometimes for students, they're like, so you really want me to talk? Yes, I want you to talk in this good class. This is not a show. You did not pay the price of admission, and I am not putting on a performance for you. We are going to engage, and you're going to engage with each other on this material. In my work, my goal is to grow my students into anti-racist, anti-oppressive, asset-based educators who think and act critically, locally, and globally. I teach about education systems, structures, and ideas as they exist, while ensuring students are exposed to critiques of those systems, structures, and ideas, so that when those students leave me, they are prepared to resist, disrupt, and dismantle systems of oppression, and to create decolonizing systems, policies, and practices, whether as teachers or in whatever professional endeavor they pursue. You can go to the next slide, please. I want to turn my attention to educators for a few minutes. This symbol is the Aya. It is a West African and Dinka symbol that means endurance, resourcefulness, and defiance against oppression. I want to say thank you to the educators especially. Thank you for being here, for being alive, for being healthy, for bringing your best self or whatever self you have to bring to your classroom, to your school, to your neighborhood, your community, your students, to us this evening. Thank you for making it. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for dealing with COVID in the midst of your home lives and your private selves and still showing up every day professional and prepared to teach and love and push and encourage and cajole and challenge, because that's what your students need and deserve. Thank you for making it. Thank you for surviving all the things that brought you right here. Thank you for surviving your own upbringing, your own education, your own experiences in this world, to make up your own mind to be here, to live and to teach and to love another day. Thank you for keeping yourselves grounded in community. Thank you for continuing the work and not being swayed or defined or dictated to by the dominant discourses of deficits and lack. Thank you for remembering that regardless of what it looks like for all of us, anything is possible and a better way is possible. Thank you for trying and failing and getting up and dusting yourself off and picking up your ego and trying again. Thank you for pressing and persisting and demanding the best and the most from yourselves, from your students, from each other, regardless. Thank you for writing lesson plans and reading essays, grading papers, calling parents, correcting behavior, sponsoring activities, doing lunch duty, morning duty, hall duty, holding coach class, conducting morning meetings and afternoon advisories. Thank you for wanting to do well for and with your students and their families and their communities. Thank you for your service, your courage, your humility, your originality, your leadership, achievement, and reflection. Thank you for your patience and vulnerability. Sometimes this work can hurt, and it can be hard to show what we're struggling with, and it can be hard to accept help. It can be taxing to give assistance, but I thank you for pushing through the difficulties, for going one more day, for coaching one more student, for consulting with one more colleague, for meeting with one more parent. Thank you for leaning into the pain. Thank you for knowing the only way out is in. Thank you for knowing you don't have all the answers. Thank you for your willingness to pursue the questions. Thank you for not separating yourselves from one another and not walling yourselves off. Thank you for your constant inquiry, your constant efforts to work together with each other, with families, communities, and organizations like Meet Indeed, with colleges like where I work, with businesses to bridge where students are and where they're going, even as you know not who they will be. In Dr. Barbara Sizemore's book, Walking in Circles, she argued that successful school reform is usually short-lived because of the deliberate sabotage brought about by those who are deeply financially, politically, or racially invested in ineffective systems thriving. So I thank you for pushing against deliberate sabotage, willful indifference, ineptitude, and hopelessness. Thank you for working beyond yourselves, your experiences, what it looks like, what it feels like, what you believe is possible, beyond the results, beyond the rhetoric, beyond the divisiveness, beyond the demonizing of teachers, beyond the spectacle and surveillance of classrooms and test scores, beyond what you can imagine. Thank you. Thank you for dreaming, for being your better self, for using your higher mind, for seeing the possibility in each of your students, for using your asset lenses, for seeing the good in students, even when they show us their worst. Thank you for modeling for students what it looks like to have love and hope and possibility. Thank you for having mercy and compassion for your students, for your colleagues, for parents, for neighbors, for yourself. Next slide, please. James Baldwin wrote in A Talk to Teachers that the obligation of anyone who thinks himself as responsible is to examine and try to change, examine society and to try to change it and fight it at no matter what risk. So thank you for asking questions. Thank you for questioning everything about yourselves, where you're from, what you believe, what you were taught, how you were taught, what you know to be true, what needs to happen to make the world ready for your students, and your students ready to make something different in this world. Thank you for schooling the marginalized, the dispossessed, those to whom an education debt is owed, the most school dependent. Thank you for wrestling with how to make your students ready to face a world beyond Philadelphia, beyond the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, beyond the United States of America, beyond people's conceptions of their Black and brown bodies and minds, beyond the world that is so often not ready for our children's genius or their questions. Thank you for working to make your students prepared to meet the world full of knowledge and full of themselves, proud of who they are, what they know, what they can do, where they're going, regardless of what the media inundates us with. Thank you for making your students into revolutionary nation builders. Thank you for giving them the skills, the tools, the content, the structure, the language to examine, inquire, analyze, to build, to tear down, to create, to recreate, to adjust, to reflect, to move forward, and never forget to look back. Thank you for mitigating the demands state and federal policies impose on us. Thank you for using pedagogical approaches which value students and center their experiences within their communities. Thank you for using liberatory pedagogies for teaching toward liberation, for the recreation of society toward our collective full humanity. Regardless of which of these listed approaches educators take, these pedagogies position classrooms and schools as student-centered sites of inquiry, analysis, and recreation for the liberation of communities and societies, not just individuals. Next slide, please. In a schooling for liberation context, classrooms and schools channel students' natural exploration about why social structures, systems, and hierarchies exist as they do, and give them the tools to challenge and change, to shift and recreate those social structures, systems, and hierarchies. Liberatory educators do this by giving students the informational, intellectual, and skills-based tools to fix the society in which we live. Liberatory educators focus more on community than individual. We focus on helping students resist, disrupt, and dismantle problematic systems, structures, practices, and policies. Liberatory schooling matters because it encourages critical thinking and critical analysis of the worlds and communities in which students live. It reminds us that another way is possible where test scores aren't the most important currency. Liberatory educators know how to increase student engagement, and using liberatory pedagogies increases educator engagement. Grace Lee Boggs described it like this: by giving our children and young people a better reason to learn than just the individualistic one of getting a job or making more money, by encouraging them to exercise their soul power, we would also deepen and strengthen their intellectual engagement. Gloria Ladson Billings wrote that schooling for liberation is an ethical position, and I thank you for taking this ethical position. Thank you.
I know that I need a moment to take in that powerful, powerful message. I'm actually a little emotional right now. That was a wonderful, wonderful message. And we are so honored. We knew that when we invited Dr. Royal to speak, that we were in for a powerful message, but that was incredible. And the exciting news is that we get to spend a little more time with Dr. Royal right now, and to bring in two of our wonderful colleagues and Need Indeed teachers into this conversation. So I want to take a moment and introduce our panelists. Of course, you all know Dr. Royal now. And I'd like to introduce Bernadine McGee. Bernadine is a fourth grade teacher at D. Newland Fells School in South Philadelphia. She has been teaching for 20 years and has been working with Need Indeed for 9 years. And we are also joined by Karen Williams. Karen has been teaching for 17 years. She is currently a 3rd through 6th grade literacy coach at the Honorable Luis Munoz Marin Elementary School in North Philadelphia. And she's been working with Need Indeed for 4 years. So thank you both so much for being here. And again, Dr. Royal, thank you so much for agreeing to join us for this panel discussion. So Dr. Royal, as you were speaking, I was thinking about Need Indeed's work with 3rd through 8th grade students and teachers. And at Need Indeed, we have this vision for where, above all else, schools are places where students' voice and agency is honored and explored, where teachers serve as both educator and facilitator. I loved your phrase, co-constructors of knowledge in the classroom, where community wisdom is valued, where authentic connection between students, teachers, and community is strong. We do think of this as a pathway to liberatory education, where students are encouraged to think critically, to be joyful, to celebrate their cultures and others, and to honor their communities and to challenge injustices. So my first question, and this is for all of you, but I wonder, Dr. Royal, if you wouldn't mind speaking first on this, is what needs to happen at the institutional level to bring more of these liberatory practices into education?
So that's an interesting question. You know, I don't know that any institution is ever going to give its people all of the conditions necessary, right, for this type of thing. It almost goes against the interests of institutions to do that, because institutions, organizations, especially large ones, they are accustomed to sort of making things formulaic, right? Because it's easier to manage in that way. Liberatory education is the opposite of anything that is formulaic, right? It is it's responsive to what the students are interested in and what they bring. So if I was going to suggest anything for an institution to do, I would be I would suggest to give people space. Right. So on the one hand, I mean, I have 2 veteran educators here, right, who I'm sure bring a wealth of knowledge and experience with them. I think sometimes about young educators who have a lot of energy and interest in liberatory pedagogies and practices, but haven't mastered some other things like planning, right, and developing a classroom culture. So I would say, you know, you can't sort of use a one-size-fits-all approach when dealing with educators who are attempting to implement liberatory pedagogies and practices. And so the best thing I think districts can do is check out what's happening, but also give their people freedom and trust them as professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. You know, we talk at Need Indeed about the fact that reform comes from time and food and space. Getting people together in a room and giving them some food and allowing them to talk and allowing them to develop their own ideas for their kids, because their kids are individual people and their classrooms are individual people. So yes, thank you for that. And I wonder if Bernie or Karen, if you wouldn't mind also answering those questions from your vantage point. Bernie, go ahead.
The word trust came up. I actually spoke to my colleagues about this and was kind of talking to them about what they thought, and that teacher trust is such a big thing that we feel like everything is being so scripted and it's being so like every minute of every day, where they don't trust that we do know how to make those valuable connections between the real world and society and still pull the writing standards in and the literacy standards and combine everything so that the children are learning, and they're also learning how to think for themselves and how to speak up and share ideas and collaborate with each other. So that the trust thing was definitely something we talked about. And we also talked about less stress on the standardized test prep, because I found through Need Indeed, we are preparing the students for these assessments. All the writing that we're doing, all the critical thinking that we're doing, it does connect with that. And it seems like that prep activity that we have to do, it takes up so much time of the day when we could be doing more of the valuable, meaningful, engaging stuff. So that's what we do.
Yes, yes. And meeting all of those standards that you need to meet while
Right.
students are engaged. It is absolutely possible. Yes, absolutely. Karen, what about you?
And for me, it's about transforming practices. I mean, if you're going to really make critical change inside a classroom to amplify student voice, I agree with a lot of things that Dr. Royal said. You're going to have to give them some authentic space to talk about things that they, yes, would like to disrupt and make change toward, especially when it comes to being in their own community. But also some of our practices need to change as well. You know, you think about the idea of even questioning and like how questioning is built on this idea of acquiring or obtaining knowledge from someone, but it is very criteria based. So like when we ask a question, often it's meant for assessment and we have a criteria for what we're looking for, right? And in like a space like this, we shouldn't have a criteria. Like we really need to be listening to ideas and exchanges and things that students say to be able to, students have a safe space for what they say. And I'm not saying that everything a student says should be truly accepted. It should be obviously within a structured environment, but it has to be a safe space where they feel comfortable with saying, I differ from the norm, and I believe this should be the thing, and no one should say, well, that's against what I believe or practices. So yes, trust is an issue, I agree with Bernadine, but some of our own practices that we do every day, even this idea of inquiry, right? Like I said, it has to be built on something different, you know, and giving students that authentic space to be able to have these ideas and exchange of thoughts.
And even the idea of inquiry means that it comes from natural curiosity, that it comes from something that is organic. So encouraging that is really important. Thank you all so much for that. And Bernie and Karen, I wonder about how your work with Need Indeed has allowed you to bring in some more of these asset-based ideas, and also how it's brought more liberation to your classroom.
I don't mind going again. I want to say, like, you know, this idea with the district recently have come up with this community meeting, right? And they say, oh, this is community meeting, this is good practices. Well, we've been doing that now for about 4 or 5 years since I've been participating in the Need Indeed program, because it was an opportunity to talk about, like I said, things that were happening in their own neighborhood, things that they're experiencing, things they're talking about, you know, real problems. And so it gave, again, students space, and they ask questions, they want to know more. They want to begin research. They want to answer the problems. They want to be critical thinkers. A lot of times you hear teachers say our students don't think, or, you know, they don't have things to say. They don't want to do work. Well, yes, they do. When it involves things that they want to learn about or problems that they want to change, it does give them the opportunity. So those are the things that has happened in my class. And I found an increased writers and increased speakers and listeners inside my classroom than before I was doing the Need Indeed program.
Thank you.
I think the aspect of student voice kind of guiding all of our learning. When I first introduced it in the beginning of the year, the kids get so excited at the idea of they're going to plan and like implement this whole thing. Because from start to finish, we don't really know where it's going until it goes there, because it's whatever they're thinking and what they're saying, and whatever question comes up from the question that we were doing research on, from a question that was asked before that. So I think just knowing that they do have power in their learning and that they are able to kind of guide what we're doing with Need Indeed, it then helps, I think, for the students to feel comfortable to speak more in other parts of the, you know, of the curriculum. When we're reading a story, then they're more likely to share opinions because they're realizing that their voices do matter and that they do have a say in their education and where it goes. I also think that the community piece is such a big one for us. The kids love doing community walks. They love doing community interviews. It's so interesting to hear the differences between who they interview. So if they're interviewing a grandparent or a parent or someone who's new to the neighborhood or a staff member, everyone has a different view of that same community. Everybody has different opinions. So it's nice to share that information.
And being able to synthesize all of that together and come back into the classroom and say, here are all the people that live in this neighborhood, and they all have different ideas. But we're all here, and how do we then begin to come together around something?
And some of the ideas of like the positives that, everybody's very easy to tell you negative things, but then to sit and think about, oh, well, what is so great about our school? That kind of stuff is nice too.
And
Absolutely.
I like seeing and hear the excitement of their voices, like, as when we come together at the end and they're so excited to present, what they have went through. They were just excited in general about like, hey, we had a problem. Here's what we learned, and we want to share with other people. So just the excitement alone about the content that they had learned about is just inspirational, just to see the student motivated. Because again, the narrative you often hear is that our students don't want to learn. They don't want to do the work. And that's not absolutely 100% the truth.
Exactly. Thank you all so much. I have one more question for all of you. And that is, what do you want your students to carry with you when you leave your classes? Dr. Royal, you talked a little bit about this in your talk, but I wonder if you could just speak a little bit more about what you want your students to carry with you.
So, I teach undergraduates who are pre-service, people who want to be teachers. I also teach young people. Today was my last day of politics of urban school reform. So I have one student in there who wants to be a teacher, but most of them are interested in doing some sort of education, so further graduate study or policy studies or something like that. And then I teach graduate students who are already teaching but are in school to get certification. I want my students to, when Bernadine mentioned questioning, or was it Karen? I don't know which one mentioned questioning, but I used to, when I taught high school, I had a huge sign in my room that said, question everything. That's one of the main things I want students to walk away with. I want my students to walk away knowing that curriculum is a cultural construct. Curriculum always reflects the people in power who had the authority to make decisions around what's taught and what's learned. But just like that thing, so it is not absolute. It is not to exist without question. And curriculum is only as relevant as the people who are learning it and the person who's teaching it. So I want them always questioning, what does this mean for the students who are in front of me, right? How do I need to mitigate what I've been handed to give them and what I actually give them? How do I stand in between that? Am I a buffer? Am I a funnel? What do I do with this, right? I want my students to, honestly, I exist in a very sort of, in a context where we're always challenging oppression. So my hope is that for my white students who may never enter an urban classroom, who may go suburban, I want them to go back with their little suburban students and turn them into anti-racist educators too. Whatever space they take up, wherever they find themselves, I want them asking themselves, who's centered, who's marginalized, who's harmed by the work we're doing, who's flourishing based on the work we're doing, and how does that need to shift?
Yes, and yes. Thank you for that. It's so powerful. And then Bernie and Karen, what about for your young students, your elementary students? What do you want them to carry with you when they leave your classroom and move on to 5th grade or 7th grade and then hopefully beyond? Go ahead, Bernie.
I just want them to know that their voices are valuable. Their thoughts are important. Their opinions are important. They can help make change happen. they see that when they do their projects that, you know, they're doing something, like they're really making a difference somehow, and that they're able to do that, and they're able to do it together. And in some cases, they were able to do it on their own in different ways. And I think it's important that they have the confidence and the strength and the intelligence to do that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I really believe in leading by example. And so the thing that I want my students to walk away with, things that I try to model every day, which is, yes, question everything. You know, that's really important. You know, you have to question almost everything, but also you have to give grace, allow your space for mistakes. You also have to show love, you know, to your community, to the people around you, to all our organizations and everybody who supports you. And lastly, you have to speak truth, you know, with love in that instance.
Well, thank you all so much on that very, very powerful note. I want to thank you all for your wisdom. I want to thank you for the care that you have for your students and your willingness to not only continue to educate our young people, but your willingness to grow as educators and people. And Dr. Royal, a special thanks to you. It is an honor to learn from you, and it is an honor to be with you this evening. And I'll turn it over to Wendy Ann to see if we have any questions to move on this evening.
All right. Well, that was very powerful stuff. I just kept nodding my head throughout and scribbling notes to try to push back some of that out. But authentic spaces, creating authentic spaces for our students, questioning for learning, I think that is just so important. We're not producing little robots or people who could just fill out bubbles on a test sheet. We're really creating the citizens of tomorrow and helping them be, you know, these authentic, active participants in their communities. So yeah, very, very, very cool. All right, so Pam is reviewing the questions that have come in and any additional ones that may have been, you know, spurred from our conversation. So while she's gathering that, I want to pause, you know, the commercial break, always in these events, to highlight some more of our sponsors. So would love to have this slide up for our corporate and individual bronze sponsors. And there are a good number of them, so we're appreciative. I do want to note that PricewaterhouseCoopers was not mentioned in the previous slide, and they should have been. So I definitely want to say that they are one of our bronze sponsors. And then we have Ballot Spar, longtime supporter of our work, David Wayne Associates, Brinker Simpson, Health and Benefits Partners, Vermilion and White, and SRII Consulting. We are eternally grateful. I can't say it enough how thankful and appreciative we are to all our sponsors for just supporting our work. We would not be here without the support of our sponsors and funders. So we want to say thank you. All right, and I also want to pause again to mention auction items that should be highlighted. So there are a couple that we kind of predetermined, but then there's so much more good stuff I want to share. So we have a Bali option that I really encourage you to take a look at, you know, get some friends together, get families together, and take this trip of a lifetime. We have a Philadelphia Flyers versus Sharks game, premium seating, parking, food and beverage certificate included, a really great holiday gift if you're into giving this season. So please consider that as an option. And I think there was a push in the chat for the dumpling making, but I'm fascinated by that. I would love to do that. So I encourage you to check that out. And the person who's doing it used to own a restaurant called Humble Dumplings. So we have an expert doing it for us. So those are a couple that we want to highlight. But I also want to mention that there are lots of items for stress relief in the personal care category. So check out the massages, the yoga passes, the facial. These are really great gifts for loved ones as well. So it's not just about you, it's a season of giving. So please bid on items to give to friends, family, and loved ones. Also, there's a lot of refreshing artwork in this time where there's just an increased focus on our mental health and well-being. Art is an important outlet, both the viewing and the participation in the doing. So we have Michelle Soslows. She's an expert artist, and she's offering a 2-hour class. So somebody, you know, jump on that. And then we just have other art from local artists. And Finally, the gift of a summer music camp for the School of Rock. This is at a steal of a price, so we encourage you to take that. It's a great gift for our loved ones at this time. So lots and lots of things to bid on. So bid early, bid often. Again, the auction closes tomorrow night at 8, so we encourage you to take a look and bid on. All right, now I think I can hand over to Pam, and she is going to ask our speakers some questions that came in from the audience.
Right, I think we are all going to be on screen together. I have some questions for the audience, but I think our audience wants to see Dr. Royal and our teachers, and I have a couple of questions that have come in. Awesome, thank you. So there has been a really interesting discussion in the chat about teaching practices for the Need and Deed teachers that you've gained from being in Need and Deed that have supported this liberatory work. I think I just want to say briefly how inspiring it was to realize, as Dr. Royal was talking about her goals for her undergraduates, these are some of the very same things that Bernadine and Karen are doing in their elementary and middle school classrooms. And I think that's just so inspiring to realize that students that young are themselves the assets in their own communities when they tackle some of these issues. But Bernadine and Karen, because you are Need and Deed teachers, are you able to talk a little bit specifically about how Need and Deed has supported your growth and professional development with some of these skills?
I mean, just the idea, the idea of starting with student voice, just like that idea when I first got here to the field, I'm like, wow, this is something missing in the classroom. You're right. The only voice that you normally hear is an educator and a teacher. It's like, I am the person here, I have all the knowledge, and you are supposed to absorb everything from me. So when I got that idea of starting with student voice and giving students that opportunity to be able to explode the issue and talk about the things, I took full advantage of it. And it did make a difference because you saw students were more engaged and they were ready to do the work. So you saw the motivation there. They just needed the tools, you know, around obviously communication, how to communicate, how to disagree, and how to have, you know, raise questions that are appropriate. So those are some of the things that we worked on. But for the most part, just framing the idea of you having the voices and giving the projects that went along with it, giving them things to do, to go along with it, like writing their poems and stuff like that. Those were great tools to use for our students, just giving them that opportunity to use their voice. And own it and take ownership of it. Like not only do I have a voice, because that's great, but now what do I do with my voice? And that's how you use it. You shape it, you help them to shape it. You could use your voice to solve problems, to critically think. And as someone said earlier, disrupt the oppressive system. You have that power within you as long as you use it, use the tools that are provided for you through Need and Deed.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds so simple to shift the power to students and introduce student voice, and yet it's so it's so amazing to realize how rare that is, and how just giving someone the space and encouragement to do it is so.
And can I say this too, Pam?
Yeah,
you save your own voice. I mean, listen, I don't know how many first year teachers went through, you know, a lot of tea and a lot of cough drops or anything of that nature to save their voice. But once you give it to them, they'll actually naturally do it for you.
That's awesome. That's great. Bernadine, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I think for me, it helped me professionally in being able to have some tough conversations, because as we start talking about social issues and we start really like diving into some of the stuff, the kids are sharing things that they've heard, things that they've seen, their own experiences, the experiences of loved ones. And it can be tough. Like, it's not easy to always have those conversations. And I think while you're never like fully prepared for it, I think it's definitely so helpful that the kids know that they can have them, and that I know how to react and how to, you know, share that, kind of give them that stage that they need, or that like spot that they need to have that conversation. And then having the kids kind of learn how to really be empathetic and to think about how other people feel and to look at those pictures that we share of the different social issues and really talk about how the person in the picture might be feeling or how the person living in that area might be feeling. And like I said, really have some of those tough conversations. I think it opens up the floor to so many more important conversations to come.
That's awesome. And again, just to lift up the fact that that is probably something that a lot of teachers imagine that they'll be able to do. And then when they get into the classroom, find it's actually really hard. And so y'all have figured that out, and it's amazing. I'll kind of direct this last question to you, Dr. Royal, because we only have a few more minutes and we want to give you the last word. We're so grateful that you could be with us tonight. But what would you say that that community members, non-educators, can do? What is some of the most important ways that we can support, that folks outside of the education field can support liberatory practices in our city?
Wow, I think that's a really interesting question. So I definitely come from the perspective that public education matters for our public good. So I would say anything you can do, whether that's you as a community member checking in with the school or schools in your community to see what do they need, what do you have they need. And and I don't mean need in terms of like donations. I mean, oftentimes there are people already doing awesome, important work who just need a few more people to get behind it. I think that we oftentimes maybe overlook some of the genius that's already happening in our resource-deprived schools. And so I would definitely suggest community members support public education any way they can, but also literally check in with schools to see in what way their assistance could be the most useful. I would also get informed and engaged. I think a lot of times we have a tendency as community members to sort of disengage from public schooling when we don't have school-age children or things like that. But I think that one of the most important things we can do is pay attention and ask ourselves about our values. And so based on what we value, what do we then want to see in schools? And I mentioned that intentionally, as I know Philadelphia is having some tussle right now over special admission school policies. And I sit here as a graduate of a special admission school, you know, one of the oldest in the country, that really needs to look at itself. And when I think about the values I believe in, what I believe for this elite high school, I know that we can do better by students in plenty of zip codes across the city who don't have access to those schools. And so I think community members need to start paying attention to those things. You're reading about being an anti-racist and being against oppression, but then what does that look like in schools to share some of the wealth and share some of the access to these opportunities?
That's wonderful, and thank you so much for such specific for naming such specific issues that we're dealing with in Philadelphia right now. This has been wonderful, and I know I speak for our audience that we wish we could just go on and on, because the amount of brilliance from all of you has been amazing and really inspiring. But we are going to say thank you to our panel and to our guest speaker. And we're going to shift and show you something special. We cannot, of course, end this evening without hearing the voices of students. And we're so excited that this year we've been able to launch our first Student Advisory Council. Over the last few months, we have really appreciated getting to know these students and having their thoughtful questions, their curiosities, and their perspectives inform our work. Recently, we gathered a few representatives from the group, and these folks are now in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we asked them to reflect on their last year when they were a Need a Deed student and conducted a project in their classroom. And we asked them to just think about what the impact of that was, what that felt like. Of course, remember, they were learning remotely last year. And also to just use their imaginations to think of what in the future, how this experience would shape them. And we recorded this session and we wanted to share some of the highlights with you tonight. So let's watch that together.
Yeah, I mean, I think like looking back on it, I'm still like super proud of my class and like all the other classes that did projects and stuff. Because we were a bunch of like 12, 13-year-olds like learning about a specific real world problem, and then being able to like make a whole project on it and learn super like in depth about it. It's just like super impressive because I feel like not a lot of kids our age could do that or would even want to do that. So I think I'm just like super proud of everyone who was able to accomplish that.
That's great. Can you just share some details about what your class actually did, Jordan?
Yeah, so our project was on racism, and we spoke to a lot of different people, like a different like public speakers, and we did a bunch of research on it. And then we kind of just made a project on what we broke up into groups and made different projects on different types of racism and how you can, fix it yourself kind of, and work on it like as a whole community and try and like more break this cycle of racism.
I agree with Jordan. I'm also like quite proud and impressed of my classes and the other classes that did this, but also for like some other reasons, because it was like very hard not being able to talk to anyone. I know like personally I'm quite a social person, so like not being able to like see people for 18 months was pretty difficult, but I'm also proud of us for managing to kind of like overcome that and work together on our project. And I also think that it was a good opportunity for us to do that, because it's a lot easier to talk in small groups, because as Jordan's class did, we also broke up into small groups. It's much easier to talk in like small groups than it is in front of your whole class. So
That's great. And do you feel like that when you think about being stuck at home and all of the limits of remote learning, you talk a little bit about what your class actually did, what topic you addressed, and how that made a difference for you last year?
So our topic was climate change, and the main thing we did was we created a website. I don't remember if we ever put it online, but it said like a little bit about us and some ways that you could like help stop climate change. And and I think that was important, and it also kind of gave us something like engaging to do in a way, like something to like put focus and attention and energy towards, which was also good since we had like a ton of like pent up energy and we didn't know what to do with it. We could just like direct it towards that, and that was good.
That's really great. You should be really proud of that. Asher, how about you?
Well, I think I'm really happy that I really hope that my class, like last year, that I really hope that we made a change a little bit, because our project was like really about like the sum of our project was really like to like literacy, like people that can't read or write, but to like help them. And like we just wanted to like help more people, help people read in the world so they can like so they can understand, because reading is basically everything thing that you do in the world, and you'll need that to like do everything, like read your jobs, everything. So that's why.
That's great. You think about how it meant, what it meant to you to be able to work on a project that was that important when you were stuck at home and remote learning.
Just helping and just being proud, and just like this is just like helping people in the world, and that's how it just like really just like to me, and helping people who can't read or write, and just making their lives a little bit more better so they can understand.
That's really great.
go. I think that could actually end up being quite an influential experience, because it's not just like learning about a topic like you do in school or hearing about it or just being like, oh, that's happening, that's bad, but it's actually like acting on it. And I think that that's something that I could take in in my future.
Yeah, I think it was like it'll definitely help having this knowledge behind us, like going into like high school and adulthood, because all of our issues and our the topics that we worked on are real life issues, and not everyone knows like much about them. So to have this knowledge and to know like how we can make a change is really going to help us in our future.
Well, this is going to sound very, very corny, but it kind of leaves me with the impression that we all kind of like have the power to change the world in a way. If we, especially if we're like working with people and we actually put it out there and don't just like keep it in or tell like, say 5 people, but like really get it out there.
Yeah, I agree with Michaela. I think definitely it definitely shows that anyone can make a change, like no matter who you are. It as long as you are speaking out against it and speaking up, it really doesn't matter who you are. You can change like the world.
Because all I really want to do this year is just really do good in school and just like be a better person. But then like you can't just like be like, oh, like one day you're gonna be like, today I'm gonna be a better person, right? But yeah, you're gonna be a better person for that one day. Keep on saying to yourself like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, right? But you never really do that, like your goal that you want to do. Cause I guess it's either like you keep on saying to yourself that you want to do it, but if you really wanted to do that thing, right, you would have been done it.
I agree with Asher, and another like hope I have for the school year is to not just like get through it, but like do it well, especially because I'm in like 7th grade, so stuff matters for high school. And
wait, I got a question.
Yeah.
If you could make like one change and make it permanently in the world, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. What if you stumped me? All right, let's go around. And who wants to go first? Who, if you could change one thing that would be permanent?
Yeah, I'll go first. What I would change is like basically just more peace in the world.
I would probably say like no more violence. Like if you have a problem with something, speak it. Don't like hit someone or something. And also like not having problems with the earth, because you know that wouldn't end well.
I also think like more just acceptance, and I think just more kindness, because I feel like a lot of problems in the world just stem from hate, and I think if more people were just kind to each other, it would solve so many issues. And it's such a simple solution, but so many people for some reason just don't want to do it.
Wow. I would say our future is quite bright with students like that getting ready for high school and adulthood. Let's applaud our students who, in the midst of adversity and challenge, really have bright hope for the future. I mean, those are not kids who are struggling. At least I'm sure we're all struggling on some level, but they're hopeful. They're ready to take charge and to be those citizens of tomorrow. And it's always amazing to hear from students. And I love that Asher was like, I have a question. And we talk about questioning everything, right? And he was right there with his question about what we could do to change the world. All right, so I think that brings us officially to the end of the program. I cannot believe it. There are a couple other things. So let me start with all of our closings. Again, just amazing content from our panel and from our students. And I love what Karen said about giving grace and allowing space for mistakes and starting with student voice. At the end of the day, if you remember nothing else from tonight, start with student voice. Their voices matter. they are experts in their own right. And we have no right as the adults, as the teachers, as the administrators to claim that we know it all or that we always know best. And it's amazing when you pause and listen how well they will lead. So I encourage you to have that as one of your takeaways. I do want to give special thanks now to many people. So I'll start again with our sponsors. Thank you all very much for your support of our work. Thank you to those who donated auction items. Really important, helps to add some joy to our evening, especially if you're winning bids. I was outbid on a couple of my items so far, so I have to go back and make sure that I can recapture them. Thank you so very much to Dr. Royal. Just awesome wisdom. She's somebody whose feet I want to sit at and just learn from, because there's just so much that she shared, and there's so much aligned in terms of my own thinking about the expectations. You know, our kids are powerful human beings, and we really have got to give them the opportunity to speak out and to lead and to take charge of things, because they're certainly very capable and they'll live the experience, right? So we have to trust that with them. I also want to thank poet and actress Jaylene Owens-Clark. And both Dr. Royal and Jaylene, Dr. Royal's book is coming out in the spring. Jaylene has a book out now. We encourage you to take a look at their bio pages on the website, check out their own websites and support them moving forward. Thank you to our teacher panelists, to Bernadine McGee and Karen Williams. Again, you are two people that every time you open your mouth, there's something that I can learn from, and it's just a joy to know that you are teaching in our public school system. It's a joy to know that teachers like you are helping our kids be the best people that they can be. And that is a little bit emotional for me, because there's so much working against our kids. There's so much that the world is pushing out to act like they don't have potential, that they're not worthy. And they're such worthy human beings. And I really appreciate that you bring that to the mix. And to our other Need and Deed teachers who are not on camera today, but I'm sure nodding along or typing along in the chat in support of what you're hearing tonight. So we honor and appreciate you and celebrate you on this night. To the board of Need and Deed, I say thank you. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. A lot of the auction items and sponsorships came from solicitations from board members, so I say thank you. But I especially want to thank Diana Jones, who is what I call the event chair extraordinaire, because she has been leading the soiree for the last, I think this is the third year now. It's a joy and pleasure to work with her. And she's just so tenacious in the background, making things happen and contributing a lot on so many levels. And so I just want to say thank you to her and to the staff of Need and Deed. Everybody isn't on camera, but everybody is just exceptional. So you saw Pam, one of our program directors. You saw Kyra, also program director, but you didn't see Tyra, program manager, Julia, also program manager, and Janet, also program manager. Just, you know, the fuel behind this machine, really working and supporting with teachers on a daily basis, just to be sure that things are flowing for them, that they're getting the resources and supports that they need, that they're being coached, that, you know, everything is flowing as it should, and sometimes just being a listening ear, because that's all that is needed at the time. So again, very, very appreciative. Also, Lisa Johns, who keeps us all moving and going and was our technical support person tonight and just filling in so many ways. I want to thank you. I know I keep going on and on. Ellen Wirt, who is one of our consultants who supports a lot of our development work. So we thank you. Our students, especially our student council students, Asha and Jordan and Michaela, thank you so very much for your wisdom and your sharing and your nudging to envision a world that you want to see as you get older. And this is a personal thank you that I'm adding to my husband, Elton Johnson, who is the one who helped make sure that I'm set up properly, that lighting is working, that our videos got edits and, you know, credits and such inserted. So I really depend on him. I think Lisa refers to him as the like silent unpaid staff member of Need and Deed. So much appreciated. And to all the significant others for our staff who just support us in many ways. Thank you to Microsoft and Ariva and Seattle Streaming for your production support and for the website and everything that you're seeing. And finally, thank you, the audience. We would not be here if you weren't listening in, if you weren't supporting, if you weren't on auction, if you weren't, cheerleaders for the work. So we thank you very much for spending your Thursday evening with us. And I think that is all for the thank yous. So very quickly, final reminder, auction open until 8 p.m. tomorrow. Bid early, bid often, outbid many people if you can, and support your loved ones with gifts for the season. Don't forget, if you don't want an auction item, you can go right ahead and just make a donation through the Donate Now button at the top of the page. I'm not sure where we are with our thermometer. I can't see it from my screen. So hopefully it's ticking on the upward pace and we're closer to our $50,000 goal. Very important for us in meeting our budget for the year. And then I think those are the only things. If there's anything I missed, please tell me. But as we close tonight, we want to leave you with Sonia Sanchez's "This is not a small voice." None of our voices are small. Mighty, powerful voices that can effect change in the world. So let's harness that power and authority that we have and continue to change the world. All right, so and that's going to be read by our poet and actress, Jaylene Owens-Clark. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy this poem and stick around for the credit slide afterwards because we have to make sure that everybody gets their credit. We appreciate you, we honor you, we thank you. Have a good night.
This is not a small voice by Sonia Sanchez. This is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of Latanya, Kadisha, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille, running over waters, navigating the hallways of our schools, spilling out on the corners of our cities, and no epitaphs spill out of their river mouths. This is not a small love you hear. This is a large love, a passion for kissing, learning on its face. This is a love that crowns the feet with hands, that nourishes, conceives, feels the water, sails, mends the children, folds them inside our history, where they toast more than the flesh, where they suck the bones of the alphabet and spit out closed vowels. This is a love colored with iron and lace. This is a love initialed Black Genius. This is not a small voice you hear.
you.